We've hit the halfway point of the NHL season, and there's been some surprises. We'll get into those today.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, people. This is your boy, Big Flip Livingstone, alongside my co-host, Steele Roden, and you are tuned in to the Locked On Fantasy Network, especially the Fantasy Hockey Podcast, and we are here to give you a little bit of a mid-season breakdown. But first of all, I just want to let you know that my boy, Steele Roden, he is your go-to for fantasy hockey source. He is a recent grad of the College of Sports Media, and he is the guy you want to be listening to when it comes to daily fantasy. That's why he's here on the show with me. You can have seen a little bit of my work everywhere from Hockey Night in Canada to the Scores app to, just punch up Big Flip Livingstone and thank me later. On today's show, we have a jam-packed episode where we're going to be talking about some daily fantasy picks, obviously breaking down Tuesday night's 11-game board where we're going to be feeding you our locks of the night, a couple of picks, and also we're going to be looking at the mid-season point in the NHL, which is what we're going to start the show off today with, which is we're going to be breaking down our biggest surprises and disappointments of the year when it comes to a fantasy perspective. And with that note, I'm going to throw it over to my main man, Steele. Thanks for joining me again, Steele.
Yeah, of course. And before I get into the first segment here, thank you for those kind words, Flip. Really appreciate that. You're hyping me up just a little bit, but I do appreciate it. But you're totally right. There was a lot of surprises, a lot of disappointments so far at the halfway mark of the season so far. So let's get right into, for me, the biggest surprise of the season. And I think it has to be Vladimir Tarasenko of the St. Louis Blues. That's my biggest surprise of the season. Not a surprise on what I thought at the beginning of the season, but I think a lot of people were surprised are surprised about how well he's playing right now. I'm going to throw a lot of numbers your way, so just bear with me here. But before the season started, his ADP was projected around 115, which is around 115.4. Before the season started, I did a mock draft. I had him around 105, 110. So in the same vicinity about what he was projected before the season started, before anyone did their draft. I actually ended up drafting him in my fantasy league in round 11 at 142nd overall. So wow, he dropped big time. I don't think a lot of people had a lot of faith in this guy heading into this season, but he's been absolutely fantastic for the St. Louis Blues. 15 goals, 40 points on the season. He's top 35 in scoring so far. He was only projected to get 49 points this season, and he's 9 points away from that already in 40 games played. So for me, he's been absolutely spectacular. And, obviously looking back at the last couple of years from 2019 to 2021, he's only played 34 games. He's been riddled with injuries. I think that was a big reason why there's been so much skepticism, surrounding Vladimir Tarasenko. He had his shoulder surgery. I think there was a lot of distrust between him and the organization of the St. Louis Blues, asking for a trade out of St. Louis. So I think a lot of people, because of all of these rumors, a lot of the news that was coming out surrounding him, just didn't know what was going to happen with his game this season. But I think a lot of people forgot that in the previous 5 years before his injuries, he ranged from 66 to 75 points in those 5 years. So for me, sorry, Flip, but for me,
please give her.
This guy has been absolutely fantastic for me, specifically since he's on my fantasy team. But yeah, he's done absolutely wonders for the St. Louis Blues as well.
I think you really kind of highlighted the key issue around maybe why there was some doubt around Tarasenko, and I think it's clear that it's the injuries because when he's been healthy, in terms of just dangerous, kind of can score from anywhere, don't sleep on this guy's offensive talent. Tarasenko's always up there in that conversation. But major surgeries, I think it was his shoulder that's been giving him the problems recently. When a guy misses that many games, obviously from a fantasy standpoint, you're obviously super wary about having a guy like that on your team. But like you said, he's still got it. And this year he's proven that, which is obviously huge for fantasy owners who have him. And you're spot on. It's been a big surprise, I would say, for sure. I'll go the opposite way, and I'll hit you with my biggest disappointment this year so far. You mentioned it earlier to me when we were going back and forth. There's been a lot of disappointments this season, so we definitely had our options to choose from. I'm going with a guy named Elias Pettersson out west for the Vancouver Canucks for my disappointment of the season so far. I think it should be noted, though, right off the bat that he has played better of late. He's got 2 goals and 2 assists over his last 4 games and seems to be kind of turning it around a little bit. So before Vancouver Canucks fans start, spewing hate on across our Twitter channels, I want to give him some props that he does seem to be finally figuring it out. But for a guy who's a 2019 Calder winner, and someone who is definitely coming into this season, he's kind of on the edge of superstardom, I would say. Definitely one of those players that was going to be counted on offensively for the Vancouver Canucks this year and counted on by a lot of GMs for his fantasy output. I'm looking at his numbers here over the last few seasons: 65 goals and 88 assists for 153 points in 165 games, to then go to what he's been doing, this year, which I think he's got 11 goals and 13 assists is in 41 games is just not going to cut it. Especially when you look at that, a few of those points have come over the past week. So I think he needs to be a lot better, and especially considering he's still so young. So maybe, from a fantasy perspective, you don't give up on him yet. But if Elias Pettersson was in your roster this year, you're definitely looking at that guy as one of the reasons why your team might not be where it should be.
Yeah, and you're right. Well, like the Vancouver Canucks from the beginning of the season, they struggled tremendously. So pretty much not just him, the entire team for the first 2-3 months were just absolutely brutal. So it is nice to see him as of late get back on the right track. And my biggest disappointment is also in the same boat. He seems to be picking it up in the last couple of games, but again, just a real big disappointment. And that's Tyler Seguin of the Dallas Stars. Like this guy, before the season started, he was projected, his projected ADP was 76.5. So around that spot. I actually drafted him, and I regretted drafting him when I did, because I got him 55th overall in the 4th round. I felt like if I dropped if he fell any later, I wouldn't be able to get him. And I actually thought he would be a really productive guy to have on my fantasy team. But 14 goals and 22 points in 42 games this season.
Right.
And it's absolutely terrible. He was projected to have 73 points this season, and he's only got 22 games in half the season so far. So for me, looking at the guys that I just picked, comparing him to Tarasenko, both these guys had surgery in last season. Right. Tarasenko had shoulder surgery. Seguin had hip surgery last season. He only played 3 games. So it just goes to show you that coming back from a serious surgery doesn't always pan out the way it did for Tarasenko. Like we saw that with Ben Bishop this year. He had to retire this season. With Anders Lee for the New York Islanders, he came back from surgery as well, and he hasn't been the best to his capabilities as well this season for the Islanders. So like so many guys coming back from serious injuries, he's just struggled this entire season. And yeah, 22 points in 42 games is just not going to cut it for me.
It's definitely a disappointment, and hip surgery is a serious one, but so is shoulder surgery. But like you said, every player comes back differently. The one point that I'd like to make about Tyler Seguin is not so much a kid anymore. He's making a lot of money. And it's not my money, so I'm not going to sit here and nitpick how Dallas spends its salary cap. But if a player is making double-digit millions in the NHL, there's a certain expectation set for them. And he's currently falling super short of that. I can't help but feel that hip injury, if this is him at quote unquote 100% healthy, I don't think that this is so much of a flash in the pan as much of a declining trend that we might continue to see with Seguin. So that's a little heads up for your next season's draft, Steele. Maybe you avoid next year. But on the other foot, and I'll hit you with my biggest surprise of the season so far, and I don't think this is really one that people are going to doubt or question. Matt Duchene has completely resurrected his career in Nashville. He's been sensational this year, fantasy-wise, leadership-wise. He's just he seems like the player that he used to be, especially offensively. You know, the former third-round pick, he managed only 6 goals and 7 assists in 33 games last year, and he already has 21 goals and 19 assists this season. He's playing on the top line. He's playing on the top power play alongside Philip Forsberg and Michael Granlund. And those three have formed some amazing chemistry in Nashville. And they really are, those three, the main reason that Nashville has seen a turnaround. And, you know, that the reason that they're battling for playoff positioning. So Duchene easily for me is the biggest fantasy surprise of the year. If you were lucky enough to take him, probably in a later round, that's one of the reasons you're likely sitting pretty in your overall standings. But yeah, Duchene, big surprise. Kind of good to see him back. And he actually has that power play in Nashville clicking at 25%. That's 7th best in the NHL. And that's not usually an area where Nashville excels. So I think Matt Duchene deserves a lot of credit as one of the biggest surprises of the midway mark. And he's definitely in the running for the Bill Masterton Trophy as the comeback player of the year. So maybe we'll get to that in a later episode in terms of future NHL award bets. Stay tuned.
Yeah, the Nashville Predators, for me at the beginning of the season, I didn't even have them making the playoffs. But along with Matt Duchene, UC Saros, Ryan Johansson, all of the guys you already mentioned, they've done absolutely tremendously for their club here. So the Nashville Predators are a team to watch out for.
From scores to totals to player performance props to where the next coach in the NFL is going to land, BetOnline is the #1 spot for all things NFL betting in 2022. And it's not just football. BetOnline.net's basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC odds coverage is the best in the business. From sports right down to your favorite Vegas casino games, BetOnline is your #1 wagering destination. And speaking of wagering, we're going to be jumping into the DFS segment right now with my boy Steele, but I just also wanted to make sure that you knew we are part of the Locked On Fantasy Network, where you can find all of our content on YouTube, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcasts. And thank you so much for listening. You'll probably be thanking us after this segment, though, because Steele's about to hit you with some DFS picks that you're going to want to be keeping your eye on. So what do you got for tonight, Steele?
Yeah, there's a lot of juicy games for Tuesday night's game slate here. I think without question, you got to hammer hard on the Colorado Avalanche game. They've won 10 games in a row compared to Arizona, who's lost 5 in a row. And they're both at the different ends of the spectrum in their division. So for me, that game is the one to hammer hard here. Mikko Rantanen, Gabriel Landeskog, Nazem Kadri, Cale Makar, all those top guys for the Colorado Avalanche. Obviously, you're not going to be able to get all of them.
Yeah.
But those guys are the ones to pick for you. They're obviously going to range from $6,500 upwards to $8,000 for DFS. So they are expensive, but it's totally worth it going up against the worst or second worst NHL team this season, as well as on the Colorado Avalanche. I think a sneaky good pick would be Alex Newhook. He's got 16 points on the season. I think he would cost around $25,000 to $3,000 for DFS. So he's playing on the second line with Nazem Kadri as well as Nichushkin. So for me, it's a sneaky good pick. I think there's a lot of value there for a guy like Alex Newhook, who's playing on that second line with Kadri, who's had an absolutely fantastic season. But that is definitely the first game I'm keeping an eye out.
I like the Newhook pick, Steele. I like how you're trying to feed us some sneaky plays here. It's a good Newfoundlander. And, we're just coming off the segment talking about big surprises. He's playing alongside one of the big surprises right now in Nazem Kadri. Actually, Nichushkin's also been great. offensively of late. So I really like that move, especially because he's not going to cost you as much. But I think we could probably just throw all the Colorado forwards on the wall and just pick a dart, and we would probably still be feeling it and come out all right, just because of how beast they are on the offensive end.
Yeah, I think they're absolutely going to destroy the Arizona Coyotes. Like, I don't think there's any question that they lose this game, and if they do, I think we, not just us, but everyone will be completely shocked. But
Yeah.
if for any reason you're not feeling that game, if you don't want to pick those players, there's a lot more games for you to pick from. The second game I have my eyes on, it's the New Jersey Devils versus the Toronto Maple Leafs, of course. So for me, obviously a guy like Auston Matthews, he's going to be super expensive. But if you're not picking any of the top guys from the Avalanche game, go with a guy with like Auston Matthews. But there's a lot of value picks a lot of guys on the Maple Leafs who just aren't very expensive right now. I was looking at it. John Tavares, William Nylander, Morgan Riley, they're all in the range of 6,000 to 6,500 right now. But I think the biggest surprise to me is Mitch Marner. He only costs 5,700, which is very, very
that's surprising.
Very surprising, but also very reasonable. I can kind of understand. Like, he just came back from that injury. He's played 4 or 5 games already, but in those 4 or 5 games, he's been absolutely dominant. So for me, if you're not feeling the Avalanche game, the Avalanche game, the Maple Leaf versus Devils game is the second game to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I'm gonna be talking about this in our next segment a little bit in terms of the angle against the Devils, but when you're talking about a team in New Jersey who, like, without looking, I don't think I could have told you the current goaltending duo in New Jersey, which we'll dive into in a few minutes here. But when that's the case, I think you've heard all you need to hear in terms of backing the offensive players on the opposing side. But yeah, the Devils are a bit of a mess in the blue paint right now. So if you can jump on any Toronto Maple Leaf, I think it's probably going to turn out well for you in the end. So I like what you're up to here, Steele.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, if obviously there's a lot of money there, you're going to have to use a lot of it on those top guys that I just mentioned. So one of the games that I liked was the Seattle Kraken versus Boston Bruins. I found a lot of value in that game in guys like Jared McCann or Jordan Eberle on the Seattle Kraken. So what would you think about that?
Yeah, you've mentioned a few times, I think you like a couple of those guys on the Kraken. I think where you're going to get value there is hope that Boston's maybe already looking ahead to the NHL All-Star break, and it could be a situation where the Kraken kind of sneak a few past Rask. To me, and you've said it all the time, it really comes down to what the budget is. But when it comes to taking players DFS against the Bruins right now, the one thing you have going your way is Rask has looked shaky. I don't know who's going to be starting in net 100%, but from that angle and from the cheap angle, I like it. I like what you're up to here.
Yeah, there's a lot of cheap options out there for you to find for the utility spot, as well as just depth players. And, just want to say that there's a lot of value in Rock Auto. So this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the increasing number of makes and models, it's almost impossible to find at your local chain auto parts store what you need in stock. There's so many intimidating and often pointless questions. To me, it's often very, very confusing and just doesn't make any sense. So you have to access rockauto.com at home or in your pocket. You'll be able to save time. You'll be able to save money when you use Rock Auto. And why would you even choose to spend 30, 50, 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or a car dealership? For example, a Honda Odyssey fuel pump is $353 from your chain store compared to $216 from Rock Auto. So there's a lot of value there from Rock Auto. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Make sure to write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box so they know that we sent you there. There's amazing selections, reliable low prices, all the parts your car will ever need from rockauto.com. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Hockey your first listen every day. Don't forget, we are free and available on all platforms, which also includes YouTube. And don't be afraid to leave any comments on the YouTube channel. We appreciate the support so much. Give us your feedback. Let us know what you disagreed or agreed with on the video. So again, make sure you go check us out on all platforms as well as the YouTube channel. We appreciate it so much. But it's now time for Flip's favorite segment of the episode. It's Big Time Bets. It's where the money's made and where we provide the stellar options for you to make some extra cash to bring home. Flip, I'm going to send it over to you now. What is your first pick of tonight's games?
Steele, I won't lie. I just have to first, I know I was gassing you up a little bit before, but first of all, nailed that ad read, nailed the intro, and now I'm just feeling a little bit crappy about myself because you're doing so well. But no, seriously, 11 game board tonight in the NHL. It's the last full night of games before, you might be sad for the next week or so while the NHL hits its all-star game break in Vegas. Don't you worry. We're going to have some nice fantasy tidbits for you for the rest of this week. So we'll be keep it locked right here. But in terms of Tuesday night's bets, we've talked a lot about it already, and I'm going right back to this Toronto-New Jersey matchup. We talked about a little bit about the goaltending situation in New Jersey, but the goaltending situation in both ends of the ice is why I'm liking the over 6.5 here. Jack Campbell started last night. Mrazek is in net. I know that I mentioned that he might be someone you might look at for a one-game pickup. He's won back-to-back games, but last game against Detroit on Saturday, he was swimming all over the ice, and he did not look great. And aside from his one solid game, against the Islanders this year, a 27 out of 28 shot performance, 27 saves for a 3-1 win, he hasn't looked great. So on the one end, you got a backup situation for the Leafs, and on the other end in New Jersey, like I said a minute or two ago, I literally had to Google who their current goaltending situation is. And let me just make sure I have this right because I hadn't heard too much about either of these goalies here. But John Gillies should be in net after a rookie Akira Schmid played last night. John Gillies is a career third stringer. I'm not here to hate on guys' careers, but when it comes to a betting perspective, he has not been good this year. In 8 games, he has 1 win. And this game looks like an over from the outset. 2 bad goalies. And then on one hand, you have the Leafs who have just been putting up crooked numbers on the regular. I'm not going to overthink this one. Looks like an over, smells like an over. I'm really hoping it's going to be an over. Over the 6.5 in the Toronto Devils game. And that's my first pick of the night, Steele.
Flip, what I like your pick right there for the over 6.5, but I don't like you telling everyone to pick up Peter Mrazek potentially. This guy's just been absolutely terrible. I know he's won the last 2 games, but he's been absolutely terrible. So I would not be picking up Peter Mrazek if there's better goalie options out there.
That was for my shortened week take, though, Steele. That was my shortened week. You need an emergency ad. I'm not trying to tell people to go out there and take Mrazek like long term. So that's a disclaimer there because you're right. So please continue.
All right, perfect. Okay, I got you there. But
yeah, let me put the caveat in there so I don't look as much of an idiot as I usually do. But sorry about that. Go ahead, brother.
All right, yeah. So with my first pick, I'm going with the hottest team probably, or the second hottest team behind the Colorado Avalanche, and that's the Florida Panthers against the New York Rangers. I am taking the Panthers on the puck line at plus 175. I was looking at the matchup between these two teams, and it seems that the Florida Panthers continue to roll. I know the New York Rangers are a great team, but Adam Fox is on the IR right now. Capo Caco is on the IR as well. So they have a couple of injuries.
Fox is on the IR, eh? When did that happen?
Yeah, just a couple of days ago. I believe it's an upper body injury, but he is on the IR.
That's huge.
So I'm very huge for the Florida Panthers as well as for the puck line right now. So that's why I'm going with the puck line at plus 175. I believe because the New York Rangers are a little bit more injured than the Florida Panthers, as well as just looking at the lineups, the third and fourth line for the Panthers are just way better than the third and fourth line for the Rangers. So to me, I've got to go with the Panthers puck line at plus 175.
Yeah. Did you say on the puck line even?
Yes, the puck line flip. The puck
Wow,
line.
this is spicy, and I'm here for it, Steele. No, like this is it, pal. We're not just taking puck line favorites all the time. You're taking a puck line road team. I'm liking it. I looked at that game a little bit as well. It feels like a good spot for Florida. I stayed away from it though, but I'm liking it. My second pick of the night, and if you don't mind, I'll follow it right up with the lock of the night because it comes from the same game. I'm looking at a really, really juicy matchup between the Washington Capitals and the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yep.
I think that's the game that kind of stands out on the board for obvious reasons. Aside from those two teams jockeying for it in the Metro, obviously you have Sid Ovi showdown, which is always a reason to tune in. So I was doing my research around that. Pittsburgh is 7-3 in their last 10 against the Caps. We've talked a little bit about the Caps struggling overall of late. I know they just beat the pants off of the Dallas Stars. I think it was 5-0. So maybe that was a turning point for them. I'm going to say it's not, though. I'm going to say this is a situation that could also be a look-ahead game for Washington, who still has to play one more game before the break against the red-hot Edmonton Oilers tomorrow night. So I like the spot for Pittsburgh. I like Pittsburgh on the money line, minus 155. But my lock of the night comes from the same game. We talked about player props and us wanting to do a little bit more of that on the regular Steele. So bear with me here. You may have heard of this guy on Pittsburgh, number 87. He's pretty good. And he's been sensational of late. He's racked up 7 points in the last 4 games, and 5 of those coming via the assist variety. I think you can feel where I'm going a little bit here, Steele.
Oh, yeah.
Sid has also crushed it against the Capitals in his career. Across 62 regular season games, Sid the Kid has 28 goals and 54 assists. So 54 assists in 62 games. That's almost an assist per game. I'm not good with math, but I think that's right. I like the Sidney Crosby anytime assist in this game for my lock of the night. We don't have the odds out just yet. You're probably looking at maybe, like a 1.6 times your money or something like that. But Sid dominates against the Caps. They're at home against their rivals. He always elevates his game in these situations. That's a fact. Sidney Crosby, assist or more against the Washington Capitals tonight. My lock of the night, Steele.
I like the Sidney Crosby assist at any time, but I believe we have our second or third side bet action here. This is payback from when you got me at the beginning of the season or at the first episode. I took the Capitals. You took the Penguins. I'm going back to the Capitals again on the money line, plus 135. This is our side bet action right now. I believe you're up 1 or 2-0 on me right now.
I think it's 2-0.
It's 2-0 flip from the first episode from the get-go. So I'm going back with my boys here, the Washington Capitals money line at plus 135. That is not the lock of the night.
Sure.
My lock of the night is the Philadelphia Flyers money line at plus 125 against the Winnipeg Jets. Both of these teams have been struggling. The Flyers did just get out a greasy win over the LA Kings in overtime a couple of days ago. So I'm going with the Philadelphia Flyers money line. I have a lot of faith in them heading into this game at plus 125. So for me, that is my lock of the night.
Hey, at some point, they're going to have to pull out a couple of wins. So why not against the Winnipeg Jets, who have, dealt with a little bit of everything this season, behind the bench issues, COVID, injuries to main big players. They're just having one of those seasons that it almost feels for them that they're ready for next season to, just turn the page, start fresh. But maybe they're actually looking at this All-Star break as that way to do it now, which is also a great look for betting against them. They really need this All-Star break to reset. So, you're on the road in Philly, already looking ahead potentially to, a week away with the fam. I like that spot, Steele, for the Flyers. I like it. Lock of the night for Steele. I'm going to hold you to that one.
Yeah, and the only Winnipeg Jet player not getting a break is Kyle Connor, because I believe he is heading to the All-Star game. So for him, he'll still continue to be playing some hockey, but to everyone else on his team, a much-needed break for them. But yeah, lock of the night for me, Philadelphia Flyers against the Winnipeg Jets at plus 125. Everyone, thank you so much for making Locked On Fantasy Hockey your first listen every day. If you want more gambling advice, what you should pick every day, make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms, just like this podcast right here. So make sure you subscribe and follow to this podcast right now on your favorite podcast platform, as well as on YouTube. You'll get the latest episodes of Locked On Fantasy Hockey as soon as it's available every single day. Make sure you go check out our YouTube channel. Like I mentioned before, let us know what you agreed or disagreed with in the comments. We appreciate all the feedback you can give us, as well as, just mentioning if you like the channel as well. So Flip and I appreciate all the support you can give us. Thank you so much again for tuning in to today's podcast with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with your bets tonight, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.